Welcome to the second of our 3 videos of worship for Sunday the 27th of June 2021. In this video, Carol is going to read us our Bible reading. It's longer than usual, and then I'm going to speak a little bit about it.
Today's reading is taken from Mark chapter 5 verses 21 to 43. A dead girl and a sick woman. When Jesus again crossed over by the boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue rulers, named Jairus, came there. Seeing Jesus, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him. "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her, so she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be free from your suffering." While Jesus was still speaking, some men came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue ruler. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher any more?" Ignoring what they said, Jesus told the synagogue ruler, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue ruler, Jesus saw commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him, and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha kum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and walked around. She was 12 years old. At this they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this and told them to give her something to eat. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
In my sermon last week, I spoke about the Christology of Mark's Gospel, because Mark's Gospel is written as a kind of challenge to the reader, saying, "These are the things about Jesus. Who do you think that he was?" And the answer given at the beginning, at the end, is Son of God, but it's a question of how you get your mind around that fact. And last week, and one of the great advantages about YouTube, of course, is that you can go back and watch it if you're not sure what I said or if you missed it. Last week, I outlined 2 possible approaches to the idea of what was going on inside Jesus' head. And then I said that the trouble was that in those days they didn't really have a modern psychological understanding of how the mind worked. And I suggested the numbskulls as a kind of idea about the way that the mind has parallel processes going on in it, and we might be able to think about Jesus's personality in those terms. Anyway, after the sermon, two people came up to me and they said, "Why didn't you talk about the film Inside Out?" And that's a good question. It's a good parallel. I don't know if you've seen the film. It's a Disney Pixar film. It concerns a girl called Riley who moves from rural Minnesota to urban Los Angeles. She's an 11-year-old, and inside her she has her core emotions, joy and sadness, and then anger and fear and disgust. Various things go wrong about the move, and in her personality inside her, joy and sadness get chucked out of the core of her being, leaving anger, fear and disgust to rule her life with catastrophic consequences. And the film is all about how joy has to recognise that sadness is actually a therapeutic thing, and how joy and sadness have to get back into the core of Riley's personality. So it's a different psychological understanding from the numbskulls, and it basically says that people are made up of different emotions, and how their emotions relate to each other is a key part of their personality. How would you try and examine Jesus in that way? Well, in today's Bible passage, there are a number of emotions of Jesus's which are pictured, aren't there? Read it through with me. Jesus has compassion, empathy at the plight of Jairus, as Jairus comes and falls on his knees before him, falls at Jesus' feet and begs Jesus to come. Of course, Jesus enters into Jairus' emotional experience with compassion. Jesus has awareness of power leaving him as he's going through the crowd, and the woman touches him and he feels that power is gone, and he turns around and says, "Someone touched me." I don't know quite what the feeling is. Have you had a feeling of power leaving you? I remember one time when my previous car was getting quite old, but I'd managed to jolly it on a couple of years and it wasn't doing so badly. I was going from Steeton across to Ilkley on the road that goes up the hill and over the top and then down the other side. And as I was coming down the other side towards Ilkley, I put my foot on the brake pedal and I felt that nothing happened, that the brakes did not engage and the car was not slowing down. I wonder if it was that kind of feeling that Jesus had, that something which he had formerly had power over was not in him any longer. At any rate, for me, that was the point where I changed the car. And of course, I pumped the brake pedal. I was quite all right. The brakes came back on, but it was a sign that something was missing. I wonder how Jesus felt that power had gone out from in him. He obviously had a feeling about that, didn't he? Jesus had relief, fulfillment, as the woman came and confessed what she'd done, and affirmation of her, "Go in faith, your faith has saved you." Jesus felt annoyance and challenge at the way that when he got to Jairus' house, the people had all prejudged the outcome and said the girl was dead already, and they laughed at him when he tried to tell them different. Jesus had a feeling of determination and ploughing on, come what may, as he took them all out and only allowed the child's parents and his own disciples to go into the inner room with him. Jesus had the feeling of being in charge as he told Jairus what to do, and in particular to give her something to eat. All these different feelings are things that show that Jesus was a real person. Jesus engaged with human emotions the same way as we do. And there are other instances in Mark's Gospel, aren't there? Jesus has fear in Gethsemane. "Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass by me. Let me not have to drink this cup." Jesus has anger and distress at people's hardness of heart, particularly in the synagogue where there was this man with the withered hand, and they weren't bothered about his healing. They were just bothered about whether Jesus would break the Sabbath rules. He was angry about that. Jesus had, I think, even disgust when he talks about the evils that come out of a man that defile him in Mark chapter 7 verses 20 to 23. When they're talking about the food regulations, the evil things which come out of a man, theft, murder, adultery, all kinds of different things. Jesus, I think, has a real feeling of disgust about those things. The emotions which Riley felt in the film are part of Jesus' experience too. And Mark's Gospel says Jesus did these amazing healings and the people were amazed. And yet, Jesus also had human qualities, which meant that the people interacted with him in a human manner. His Goddish bit didn't overwhelm his human bit, his emotions, any more than the God side of him overwhelmed his reasoning, as I was saying with the numbskulls illustration last week. How could we say that Jesus' inner personality might work if we regard people as this collection of emotions in the way that Riley is regarded in the film? Well, the question of whether we regard that as the analysis of people is a good one, isn't it? But engage with it for the moment. Let's see where it takes us. I think you can say Jesus did have the full range of emotions that Riley had. But I think one of the differences is that in Jesus, the emotions all worked together and they all kept in balance. Unlike in Riley, where joy has to kind of keep a lid on the others and suppress fear and keep anger in his place and keep disgust kind of out of the picture, and even try and limit the influence of sadness, because joy feels that sadness is a negative thing in people's lives. Jesus wasn't like that, and actually the film is all about the development of Joy's character and how she has to come to realise that sadness is an integral part of humanity, because sadness allows therapy and allows empathy and allows healing. And in the same way, in Jesus' personality, we might say that the chairmanship function which was exercised by Joy is exercised by the God part in Jesus, whether that's Jesus' joy, maybe when John's Gospel says, Jesus says, it's my delight to do the Father's will, maybe that's his joy, or maybe we think of it as a different thing from joy. But anyway, part of the essence of Jesus' character is that the God part of him enables the human sides of his emotions to work all together. And in the film as well, there's quite an emphasis on the idea of islands of personality being built on emotions, being built on memories, which are kind of the foundation of what Riley's existence is all about. But in Jesus, of course, as well as the memories, he has the insights which come from God. So I suppose you could say that Jesus' personality is founded on his eternal relationship with his Father, which is another island of his personality, which enables him to interact properly with the world. I think this part of Mark's Gospel is encouraging to us, because it encourages us to believe that Jesus can heal us as well. If we are in difficulties like those people in the Gospel, well, Jesus can do something about them. But I also think Mark was trying to say Jesus is an integrated personality in the way that his feelings and his godness interact to make him the well-rounded God-man. Isn't it wonderful that Jesus is this kind of personality, and he is on our side, and he can heal us? That's the end of the second of these 3 videos, and again, to follow us into the next one, please just choose it when it appears on the screen after I've finished speaking.